my friends, and nice to be with you again. This is the 5th, I think, of December, and we're rolling into the Christmas season and the holiday season, and we're just back. My family and I are back from spending a little time in Portugal. We spent 5 days in Lisbon, which is a marvelous place, really quite fun. Nice time of the year to go there. Every day was in the 70s, and so it was really quite pleasant compared to the kind of wintry weather that we've got going here in West Virginia. But before that, I drove down to Orlando to the Martin Armstrong's World Economic Conference. This is an annual event that Marty does, and he gets maybe 200 or 300 people in the room, and maybe as many as 20,000 on live stream all over the world. And so this is a heavily kind of transmitted virtual kind of audience. And it's an interesting event because there's only kind of one program to the thing, and that's Marty. And he just stands up there and talks, essentially. There are a couple of little other people who stick their head in every once in a while, but it's certainly predominantly Martin Armstrong. Armstrong is interesting, of course, because of his Socrates computer program, and which has never been wrong in terms of its predictions about markets and economies and even political kinds of things for the last 40 years. And so it was fun to go down, not only to listen to Marty, but also there's some wonderful people down there. There's a number of followers of the Arlington Institute to come down there every year. And this year we had Mark Dorston from kind of who was a regular in the Arlington Institute things, was down there, as well as John Schmidt. And so we had a nice little group of folks, and it was fun to get together. I wanted to give you a background and some update on what Marty had to say, because it's very germane to what's going on now. Martin Armstrong's computer for 40 years has said that between 2025 and 2027, there's going to be a global civil war, a general uprising of people against their governments. If you're paying attention and you're looking in the right place, there are all the indicators that say that this is absolutely in train, and this is coming this way. I'm forgetting the two cities that I was hearing about and listening about this morning, but there's hundreds of thousands of people in these major kind of capital cities in different countries that are, marching against their government. Which one? Certainly Seoul and Korea is one of them, I think. And anyway, there's just all indicators, and there's reactions like this that are going on all over the place. What Martin says is that by 2025, then what you're going to start to see is the unraveling of many of the major kind of political structures, geopolitical structures, if you will, and in particular, the end of the United States. He spent Sunday morning, in fact, talking about the different kind of failure scenarios for the United States. And so that's very much still on his, in the information and the data that he's getting back from his computer. What he also said was that there are, again, and this is not new to him, but it was a reinforcing that says that 2027 is going to be an extraordinary year. And so I think it's something you can kind of bet your money on. In particular because not only he, but many other sources, including guys like David Martin, have all indicated that the financials, the global financial system hits the wall in 2027. That is to say, the present 35, $36 trillion in debt that the United States has, that it takes upwards to 50% of the revenue that's generated by the IRS just to pay the interest on that money. It only gets bigger and bigger, and it gets to the place somewhere between now and then, the next 2 years, that that no countries will buy our debt because they know that nobody's going to get paid back, and in particular, you're not even going to get your interest paid on the thing because it's going to be impossible to pay the interest. And so between now and then, not only do you have some kind of a crisis that shows up, but also you've got a fraying of the underlying institutional systems because the financial process is not sustainable. You've got essentially a collapse of the dollar in the next 90 days, and that it goes through 3 different stages. The first one being kicked off by this statement that Trump made here 3 or 4 days ago, saying that he was going to put 100% tariff on all these people if they didn't use dollars. And what Cliff High's assessment is that within 15 days of that, which is another, I don't know, a week or something like that, it's the reality is going to settle down, and Trump and his advisors are going to quickly come to the conclusion that threatening everybody is a non-starter, and that doesn't work. And so they'll come back for the second kind of event, and they are going to try to sell a new currency, a new dollar that's based upon some kind of underlying value, that some asset, that's some hard asset of one sort or another. Not gold, but something like, I don't know, like petrodollars or something, but not petrodollars. And that too will be rejected. And so at about the 90-day point from the beginning of this sequence, then there's some kind of capitulation and understanding that that the dollar in the future is not going to be what it has been so far. In any case, it's a really, really big kind of fundamental thing that's happening. Now, you can bet a little money on Cliff High because he's got an interesting kind of near-term track record. Cliff High, as some of you may know, started in 2009, starting to get early indicators in his WebBot program, saying that there was going to be this conversation between 2 important people that is going to set off what ultimately would be some major indications of a situation, a major situation with lots of kind of UFOs in the sky or something like that. And in 2012, he revisited that and wanted to kind of confirm what that was about. So he hired the remote viewers, the best ones in the country and the world, perhaps, and to look at this. And they said that the conversation was going to be between Joe Rogan and Donald Trump. And so going into 2016, they thought that maybe that would show up somewhere in the debates or something associated with the 2016 election, and it didn't. And so it's been kind of laying on the back burner. And then more recently in August, I guess it was, maybe it was September, when Rogan announced that Trump was going to be on his show. The Cliff pulled out all this information from the past and confirmed that 39 days after that event, there would be uh, these UFOs all over the place. And that would, people would look back in the future and look back historically and say the new era, which Cliff calls the sci-fi world, will start. It started back on that day when that happened. Well, that day was the 3rd of December. And on the 3rd of December, which was 2 days ago, there were UFOs all over the place, all night long and the next night, and tracked over Washington, over the Capitol and the White House, and all over our nuclear weapons locations in Europe and even here someplace. Anyway, there have just been all kinds of them. I just saw one kind of video compilation of all of the different places where within the last 2 days there have been all these videos taken of these UFOs of one sort or another. And it's really a significant uptick. And they just sit there and hang there. And this is what Cliff believes is the beginning of this exposure process. It's not kind of disclosure in the terms that Stephen Greer talks about it, as much as it is kind of a systematic exposure that's being generated from their side, not from our side. And so the fact that shows up on the day that he says that it would, starting from information from way back, 10 and 15 years ago, is a confirmation that his system is really, worth listening to. Well, what Cliff High says is that the U.S. government starts to unravel very quickly, about February or so, and demonstrably kind of starts to unravel, because what happens is that people will quit paying their taxes next year, because it'll be obvious that this is a losing proposition, and it isn't worth throwing good money after bad. And what that means is that then there's agencies within the government that are not going to be able to get paid and will not function as they have in the past. And you could kind of argue or postulate or guess that Donald Trump coming into office and carrying on the way that he seems to be programmed to do, with the kind of people that he's putting into his cabinet, might aggravate and accelerate that whole kind of process. So we're into, just in kind of, if you will, conventional terms, into an amazing kind of period of time. Now, you could look at all of that and the political things that are going on with the wars and Putin and whatever, and that in and of itself would be enough to get your attention and convince you that there's something really strange and unusual going on right now. And this is not business as usual, and it's certainly, where it's going is not anywhere where we've been before. And so there's a lot of kind of conventional analysis Certainly not in the mainline press, but although there's a lot of talk about civil war in the United States and other things that you would never in your lifetime have heard before. And so there's certainly anomalies that are starting to show up in terms of the conventional analysis. But there's something more than this, and something profoundly more than this that's at stake and in play. I gave a talk at our transition talks a few months ago. I gave a talk at our transition talks a few months ago here in Berkeley Springs, and talked a good bit about some of the projections and kind of predictions that came out of a series of books that Barbara Marciniak wrote back in the 1970s and 80s and early 90s, I guess, that were channeled from what she believed were the Pleiadians. And what the Pleiadians said was that which was really interesting because I mean, it's interesting if you set this up correctly, because the presumption that you're going to get a new world and there's a new human and there's a jump in the evolutionary process of the species and so on is really easy to kind of talk about and kind of mouth the words without thinking about the possibility or the likelihood that this new human is really, really different, and it doesn't work the same way in kind of everyday terms that we do. And more than that, that reality is built around a new kind of set of operating principles, like fundamental operating principles of the space and the operating space that you're in. And it's very easy. I like to say that one of the problems that you have trying to think about the future is that we all think like human beings, which is to say that we are locked into the experiences we have, the education we've got, the presumptions that we bring into the room about how everything works. And so that builds the box, their paradigmatic box that we all operate out of. And we say that this is how reality, this is it, how we make sense. And this is what sense is. And that kind of in a de facto way locks you into a mindset that if you stray too far out of that box, you start saying, well, that's weird. That's kind of like science fiction or something like that. Well, you've got to essentially you've got to disconnect yourself from this reality if you're going to kind of effectively kind of walk your way across the possibilities that are out on this horizon, because otherwise you're tethered to these ideas, and it's not even starts to be fair to presume that that the way we understand how things work is the way they're going to work in the future, if this change is as big and profound as we think it is. And so, therefore, you got to start with this kind of situation where you get rid of disbelief, and you kind of wander freely into the possibilities and consider all of these things. And you don't believe them all, but you consider the possibility that they'll all exist. Okay, so what the Pleiadians say is that time, as we understand it, is novel, unique somewhat to the experience here on this planet, and that most of the universe not all of it probably, but most of the universe is past the point of being locked into the kind of this organizing process of time, and that everything exists all in one big kind of, think of it as a big hairball or a string ball or some kind of a thing where everything that exists, everything possible in the past or the future, all exists in this one place. And so it's this, it's variation on the thought of now being only one now, and that reality only being existing, and that in fact there is no past and there is no future per se. It's the only thing there is now. Well, in that now that these folks from the Pleiades have they have come back from the future, and they have come back to talk to us and engage with us and encourage us and inform us because some horrible, huge, traumatic thing is happening out in the future that has kind of existential implications for the whole universe. I mean, it's that level of significance. And it's so bad that they have decided that they engaged somebody called a Time Lord or something like that, who is the expert at understanding time and being able to get into this big ball of the now and being able to kind of figure out where in the time of the now was the precedent that kind of worked its way out to be the extraordinarily negative situation that Pleiadians are now experiencing. And so they're trying to go back to the beginning, to where the decision got made that resulted sequentially with a series of many events to this horrible situation that they are now experiencing out at sometime, I don't know, a million years from now, whenever it is. And so this time guy found out and showed them where the place was that the decision was being, the initial decision got made that set off that time, off on that timeline, and that decision is now, like now. The decision is in the next 2 years. That decision has not just huge and significant implications for the future of humans, and our planet and other kinds of stuff, but that it is far, far more important than that, because what we decide and how we proceed through the next 2 years is going to be the basis, the fundamentals of that decide whether a new world emerges and it goes off in another way, and there's an alternative to this kind of dystopian world, or whether it goes out into a new world that's built upon a new set of principles and an empowered, enabled human being that is not constrained and by technology and living in a technocracy. And so it's because that dystopian track is all about, is a digital world, that's the track that's digital and goes off and increasingly controls you and gets inside of you and decides who you are. And you could make the case that that's the simulation world. That's where the simulation world kind of establishes itself from then on, because it's all inside of a game and it's all digital. And so we're talking about this alternative track that goes off in another way. Okay, so it's one thing to listen to Barbara Marciniak and the Pleiadians. I mean, how do you know who these people are? Uh, certainly possible. It could be any kind of source. I don't know who they are. But in any case, it's an internally consistent, very resonant, for me at least, message that has the kind of it has the feeling of being accurate. And so you say to yourself, so yeah, so it's important what we're going to do here. Well, I'm now read another book that was written in 2012, and uh, it seems to be completely independent, and it is called A Handbook for a New Paradigm, and it has no author, no indicated author, and then the preface and the foreword it says, you know, we've all decided that who've contributed to this that we're not going to put our names on it, and we're not going to take any compensation for what this might be. But it's clear that it has some kind of an off-planet source somewhere in there, because they say the same thing. They say that there is this giant dystopian, horrible kind of situation that is existential for the universe, and that the decisions that we're making now are going to make all of the difference. And they distill it down very clearly uh, into the principles of the Arlington Institute. They don't say that, but that's what they say. They say is that if you don't come up with a new idea of a new world real quick as an alternative to the way the digital world, that technocracy is taking you, uh, you will not extract yourself within, you've got a window here where, and it's a really short window that if you don't do this, you'll not be able to extract yourself, and you'll get swept downstream. They will have you by the digital short hairs, if you will, everywhere. No matter what whether it's your money or your time or your thoughts or your location or your purchases or your ideas or anything, they'll have it all, and you will have no way to operate outside of that kind of a system. Wow. So I sit there and listen and read that and say, man, that's saying the same thing these other guys did, only it's got a little bit more detail, and it has a solution set here associated with this. And it says really quite explicitly, you need a model start to build a model for a new world. You need an alternative. And as it turns out, that is the only kind of approach that is going to succeed in the face of the very sophisticated, very well funded kind of forces on the other side, who are all arrayed and planned for any kind of threat to that digital world, and that the only alternative to that, and by the way, it's a real loser to try to approach them directly and try to threaten them directly, because they got all the time and money and capabilities, and they've thought about all of this and run all the scenarios and everything. I mean, this is a big deal, and and so, but the way in is to do a new world. You know, we were talking a little bit about this on Quartet yesterday with Penny Kelly and Greg Braden, and I surfaced this whole thing, and And he says, "Oh, so you pick up your game, you pick up the ball and take it off the field and leave and go somewhere else." Well, it's really not like that. It's really like having a checkerboard, and you could be playing uh, chess, or you could play checkers on the same board, and so it's like having to play in the same environment, but playing a different game than the game that they want to play. We're not going to go away necessarily, and we're not kind of taking our ball and going away. But there is this very real kind of necessity and opportunity requirement, if you will, to build, start to build an alternative world. I was reminded about that as happens to me when I'm running down some kind of a track, because all kind of things start showing up, books and quotes and videos and things. But that of Bucky Fuller's quote, you remember that says that the way you change the world is not to attack the old world or change the old world, is go invent something new that makes the old world obsolete. And so that's essentially it. There's that we need to do. We need to get about building a set of ideas about a new world, and very, very quickly. Uh, and so that has encouraged and motivated me to take the next slot of transition talks, which is in January on the 18th, I believe it is, Saturday the 18th. And I'm going to do a presentation specifically about this with far more information than obviously that we've mentioned just now. I believe, for me at least, this is probably the most important thing that I've ever kind of put together, because it has come together in a very interestingly, because it's been uh, Greg Braden and I in What's Up, which is the program that we just kind of riff on whatever is on our minds. I've talked a good bit about this, and I've teed it up into quartet a number of times. And you know, the underlying thread, this underlying thread says, what in the world's going on? Why? Who's doing what to whom, and why? Where are the different scenarios that might come out of this? You've got, and so we kind of worked our way around all the kind of component parts, and all of a sudden, boom! In about 2 weeks, the whole thing started to come together, and it says, "This is the way it's going. You got this much time. Here's the way out, and it's very clear. This is what you got to do." And it drives us straight toward, from my point of view, is from the Arlington Institute's project of called Transition Net, which says we need to get this global collaborative platform, this virtual space where large numbers of people can all get together and start to literally build a new model of what a new world could be. And that then, when you get people entrained and thinking about that in the same way, then it has huge energetic implications and manifestation implications, and you start to you lay the base for the emergence, a literal emergence of this new world. And so this is kind of it's hard to kind of overstate how cool and big and extraordinary this is all. But I'm here to tell you that it's not easy to get into the space where you really internalize and imagine this. It's really easy to stand afar, hear the words, they all make sense, and not think about what this means. Because if you think about what it means, then what it does is it generates a palatable, substantial sense of urgency. You just say, "Oh wow, we don't have much time, and this is really big, and this is really important, and this is why we came here. I mean, this is what this is about. So that's what we're going to talk about on the in depth on the 18th of January. And so I wanted to encourage you all to plug in either virtually on our live stream or come to Berkeley Springs and be with us, because it's going to be a very interesting kind of presentation. And let me just say again, this is a really, really, really big deal. It was interestingly surprising to me yesterday when we were taping Quartet and we were talking about this, and I saw Penny Kelly come in from one rather different direction and Greg Braden and another one, and we all came to the same conclusion. There's about 2 years, and if we don't get this and we don't do this right, then this thing is going in a direction that we really don't want it to go. And so this is exciting times and chance to really do big and amazing things. And I hope that you'll all be with us, because that's what we're going to do. So thanks so much. And we'll be back and talk about this for sure.